Hey everyone, welcome to the first video for chapters 14 and 15. I'm going to be combining chapters 14 and 15 into one unit here, not one video. I'm going to be breaking them up into probably 4 or 5 videos, but in the interest of time of speeding things along here at the end of the year, I'm combining the most important topics from these 2 chapters into one unit. And the overall theme for this unit is called A New Global Age. And the reason why this is referred to as a global age is because starting in the really 1492, but certainly into the 15 and 1600s, this is the first time that humans on all the continents, Europe, Asia, Africa, North America, South America, are now having contact. And this is the first time that this happens in the history of the planet. So that's why this is referred to as a global age. So let's get into the first section here. I'll talk about the search for spices. Now, spices is kind of a generic term, but we're really referring to goods from Asia. But we'll get into more into that in a second. First, let's take a look at a map. Now, it's important that we understand a couple of things for terminology here. At the time, Europeans, and here's Europe right here, they referred to everything on this side of the Atlantic as the Old World. All right, so everything over here is Old World. They had no idea that anything over here even existed. All right, there was no recognized documented contact between Europeans, Asians, or Africans with anything over here. So they're going to refer to all of this when it is quote unquote discovered as the New World. And they divide this here. They kind of divide it in half, and they refer to each side as called hemispheres. Right, so over here we will have the East Hemisphere, and over here we have the West Hemisphere. Okay, so just want to go over a couple of terminologies. Now let's get back into this whole search for spices here. Let's first talk about the motivations for exploration. Motivations are a reason why you do things. First and foremost, there was an increased demand for Asian goods. After the Crusades, Europeans started to increase contact with the Middle East. Merchants from China and Korea, Japan, Southeast Asia, they were doing business into the Middle East, and Europeans discovered things like pepper, cinnamon, cayenne, things like that. And so that's why we kind of use this generic term spices. But tea was a big one as well, especially in England. So this demand for Asian goods was increasing. Now these trade routes, if you wanted to get from the Mediterranean Sea to the Middle East and then beyond to Asia, it was controlled by Arab and Italian merchants. You look at the map here. So here's the Mediterranean, right? There's Italy. Just sticking out there, you can see Rome. And all of these overland trade routes, you got to go through the Middle East here. Now, that's still a little bit of a tricky proposition for European merchants because since the Crusades, Europeans and Muslims in the Middle East still not on the best of terms. So if you wanted to get anything from over here, remember here's the Silk Road as it works its way through, you had to go through these Arab or Italian merchants. Other Europeans, they wanted more direct access. They said, we're tired of having to pay extra taxes to these Arab and Italian merchants. What if we were able to just get the goods ourselves? But how were they going to do that? So that led to this increased desire for what they call exploration, but really it was about trade routes. Now, the Portuguese were the first ones to really get involved with this. Portugal is this tiny little country here. All right, there's Spain, France, Italy, the boot sticking out. Portugal, even though it's a small country, it's got great access to the water. It can just loop around here into the Mediterranean, and it's got all this access to the Atlantic. Let me get rid of this. So I'm going to throw a couple names at you here pretty quickly here. And the first name is Prince Henry the Navigator. He encouraged shipbuilding and cartography. Cartography is making maps. That's all that fancy word is. All right, and he thought that building maps was very, very important because then you can know where you're going. And he also wanted to spread Christianity into Africa, so he had some of that missionary spirit. Next one is this guy, Bartolomeo Diaz. I'll show you on a map the journeys of Henry and Bartolomeo, but I just want to get these in here first. He was the first one to sail around the Cape of Good Hope, and the Cape of Good Hope is at the bottom of Africa. And then the last guy, Vasco da Gama. Da Gama made a very, very important voyage, and that he made it all the way to the Indian Ocean. So let's take a look at the map here. The purple, Henry, as he comes down, You see how he kind of made it down around the west coast of Africa. And then Diaz in orange as he goes down kind of hugs it. And this is that Cape of Good Hope down at the bottom of Africa. But he stopped there. Now, Da Gama, this is the big one as he comes in here. And notice this big bend that he took through here. That was because trade winds that they didn't know about blew him almost all the way to South America. But he eventually makes it all the way to India here. And that is very important because that establishes Portugal as being the first European traders that can now go all the way around Africa to India and then back. So Portugal is the first European country to stake its claim on any direct maritime voyages from Europe into the Indian Ocean down here. Now, Columbus. Let's talk about Christopher Columbus, because Christopher Columbus, while his heroism is tremendously overrated, his importance cannot be overstated. He was tremendously important in world history. First and foremost, it's important to know that he was Italian. Even though he sailed for Spain, he was Italian, and he had the idea that, all right, so Europeans are looking to get to Asia. That means that they have to go east. That means we got to go all the way around Africa, like on that map I just showed you. What if we go the other way, though? What if rather than go east, we went west by going across the Atlantic? Now, hundreds of years prior, that idea would have been thought to be crazy because a lot of humans throughout the world's history thought that the earth was flat. But at that time, it was becoming more and more accepted that the earth was round. The problem was that nobody had ever truly proven it. Nobody had ever gone the whole way around the globe in 1492. So he went to a bunch of different people, and they all said, no, there's no way we're paying for it, until he got to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain. And so he sets off on his voyage with his 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, and he makes it to the Caribbean in the year 1492. Now, he never stepped foot in what would eventually become the United States, actually never stepped foot in North America, but he bounced around some islands in the Caribbean, and he thought that he had landed in the Indies. The reason why he thought he was in the Indies, and the Indies is like a generic term that Europeans used for the Far East Asia, is because Columbus believed in what was known as a smaller Earth model. You look over here. All right, so this is about the real Earth, distance it takes to go from the Canary Islands, which are these little islands off the coast of Africa in the Atlantic, all the way to Japan. It's about 12,000 miles. Columbus, he believed in this much smaller one. So when he got into the Caribbean, he thought that he had made it all the way to Asia. And, at that time in 1492, there was no way of him truly knowing that he didn't. He gets there, and it's not like you can just Google what people in Japan or Asia looked like in 1492. He knew that it was a long way away. They were very, very different culture. They were of darker complexion. He lands in the Caribbean. He meets Native Americans. Vastly different culture, darker skin and complexion. He says, oh, I made it. And so that's why he referred to the people that live there as Indians. And that term, unfortunately for them, stuck for hundreds of years. So he claims his lane for Spain. And now Spain is the first European country to lay claim to, as we refer to, that New World. Now, dividing the New World. So Portugal wants in on this as well. So Portugal and Spain both are the first ones to start trying and gobble up all this land in America. More Spanish conquerors, we'll call them, not even explorers, follow after Columbus. Portugal starts sending people. We'll talk more about that in later sections. And it gets to the point where war is about to break out between Spain and Portugal. And the Pope actually has to get involved, believe it or not. And in 1494, they sign this Treaty of Tordesillas. And that says that Spain is going to get all the land to the west. Portugal gets all the land to the east. Now, the west and east of what? Well, let's look at the map. All right, so this line of demarcation, this line that goes right through here, that says that everything over here is going to go to Spain. Everything over here is going to go to Portugal. Now, if you're just looking at it in terms of the Americas, because by this point, Spain was gobbling up all of this territory in here, you're like, wow, Spain makes out great. However, Portugal would maintain all of the areas that they were claiming along the coast of Africa. They still get India over here. And Portugal is going to grab this territory, which they're going to expand a little bit more over the line of demarcation. And that is eventually going to be their South American colony of Brazil. All right, we'll talk more about that later, though. So, Ferdinand Magellan. All right, so beyond Columbus, Ferdinand Magellan is the most important name that we go over in this section. He was Spanish as well, and He was the first to circumnavigate the globe. Now, circumnavigate, that is an important word for you to know. That just means to go the whole way around. All right, you walk out the steps of Bishop Timon, you walk the entire way around the block, and you come back to the front steps of Bishop Timon. You have circumnavigated the block. That's all that word means. So this is his voyage. We'll go over a couple dates on this in a second, but it took him 3 years. Technically, it didn't take him. I'll go over more of that in a second. But you see, this is where he sets off from Spain in 1519, makes his way down across the Atlantic, hits a couple spots around along the Atlantic coast of South America, and in 1520, he goes from the Atlantic to the Pacific in this Cape Horn that is down here at the bottom of South America. So then he enters into the Pacific, starts a very, very long journey all the way across the Pacific. And in the year 1521, he lands in the Philippines in here. Claims that for Spain. That's where the Philippines gets its name. They were named for King Philip of Spain. But he is killed getting himself involved in a local dispute. His crew, without him, they continue the voyage up all the way back to Spain a year later. So 3 years it took for everyone to finally make it, but proof had finally been made that the earth is officially round and that you can go all the way around it in a boat. So a lot that I threw at you in this one, but it's important that we went over a lot of names and events in this one. And in the next one, we're going to be getting into Europeans' increased involvement in Asia.